Great. Well, I hope you're here for Roses Are Red, Violets Are Blue. We love social engineering, and so should you.
Yeah, so our discussion is really about two sides of the same coin. It's social engineering for both the red and the blue team. So looking at the techniques that both teams could potentially leverage.
So I'm Krittika Lalwaney. A little background about me. I'm a red teamer at Capital One. And before I became a red teamer, I was an incident handler. So I worked in a SOC and learned everything about phishing, malware, all sorts of fun stuff. And then I had the opportunity to do a little bit of purple teaming. So I got to actually fix things. So defending, then fixing. And then I realized fixing was really hard. And then I decided to go and break things. So now I'm an officially on the offensive side as a red teamer.
And I'm David Cafaro. I am in the Information Security Office at Capital One. I have been in technology for way too long, but still enjoy it. And of course, blue team, because I'm trying to get things fixed and team up with the red team so I can find out what to fix.
Yep. And a little bit about my Twitter handle, like my picture. I like Grace Hopper. I'm a female in tech. And why not? She was really cool. So.
Yeah, and mine's just me. I enjoy coffee. I have a dog. And often I need more coffee before I start grimacing.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of us.
No?
Oh,
very German. Okay. Yeah, free service that generated it for me.
So yeah, so just to set the baseline for everybody, since I'm sure most of you know what social engineering is, but a good background is the way we're going to define it anyway, is it's truly an act that influences a person to make a decision that may or may not be in their best interest, right? And that works for a red teamer as well as, in this case, a blue teamer, but as a red teamer, we're always trying to either gain access or gain information that's going to eventually be useful for us in an operation or an exercise, and eventually there'll be a way that we can do lessons learned.
Yeah, and it's the whole purpose of this presentation is really taking a look at all those techniques, all those different processes, and really showing you how not only is that all about the red team and how you potentially get access to things you don't want or what they don't want you to get access to, or the may not be appropriate stuff, but also getting them to do the things they should be doing, what they may do, and what you do want to have happening within your org.
So just a show of hands, I'm kind of curious, who is on the red team side of things? Okay, a few people.
Sure. Awesome.
And who is on the blue team side of things? All right, good. That's awesome. Thank you for being here. So the thing about red teaming is there are a lot of red teams now, and every organization does it differently. So just to be on the same page, the way we really view it, the way I view it, is that it's truly a way to help the blue team, right? And that's our major focus. And so red teaming is defined as a way to actually emulate actual threat actors out there, so nation-state activity to hacktivists, and actually test and hammer away at your networks. Because then you're actually giving that practice to the blue team, and they should be catching you, as opposed to it just being the bad guys. The good thing is here you have an opportunity to educate and bolster your defenses.
And for blue team, we're looking at there's a range of people who can be considered part of the blue team. It's not just necessarily the information security office. It could be the technical teams that are deploying stuff. It could be your HR department. These are all the groups that I look at as part of this blue team, and people who could potentially use any of these techniques to support this. So, I'm assuming that the people who didn't raise their hands for the red or the blue side are either purple team or just more of an introvert like myself and didn't want to answer. But hopefully any of the stuff we're talking about applies to all of you in some way in your roles.
Yep, so now I'm combining social engineering and red teaming together, and you've heard a lot of great talks today that kind of walked you a little bit through that. So the main focus for a red team is, well, you're trying to gain some foothold into this organization or network, right? Especially if you're doing an external in engagement, you're not assuming that you're an insider threat. And so to do that, how are you going to do it? It's either through, physical means, or you might be sending a phishing email. So a phishing email is just trying to get somebody to click on a link, which could then give you access further. So you have your OSINT research, and you're going to stage this attack, and then you're going to exfiltrate as a way to do like a full op, right? So that's the big picture. But to initially gain that access, you could do it through phishing, and then vishings through voice, basically soliciting information. So, DEF CON SCCTF is a really good example of that. And smishing is your text messaging. So it's like phishing through text messaging. Click on this link. How many people have gotten those text messages? It could be your bank. It could be anybody saying, oh my God, you just need to click this. There's some suspicious activity. And I've fallen for those at times. And then the other way is impersonation. So actually being somebody from that organization and pretending to be them.
And then when you look at blue team, same things, same modes of communication. We use emails, we use text messaging. You have in-person meetings, you have presentations. So when we're looking at social engineering in the context of the blue team, we're looking at how do you manage and shape those messages to be more effective in what you are trying to accomplish. You don't want to walk into a room and be the security guy and everyone shuts down like, oh great, it's going to make me do something again. It's about getting in there and using social engineering to make them interested and engaged with you in the communications. So through our presentation, we're going to really talk on 4 main things. These are all things that are used both in the red team and the blue team. So we have information gathering, OSINT. This is critical regardless of which side you're playing on, because you need to know about what you're getting into, where you're going. Communication models, how you create and build up your message to that person. The psychological principles, so these are some of the things to keep in mind as you're working with someone, because it will help make your message more effective. And then, of course, just general influencing others. How do you pull all those different techniques, all that information that you've gathered to influence your target? Mm-hmm. And we will start with information gathering.
Well, so information gathering, really fun times. It's basically your reconnaissance, your OSINT. You guys all know everything about it. Well, who here has a LinkedIn profile? Everyone's hand should go up. Come on, if you're looking for a job, what are we out there? Anyway, so I have a LinkedIn profile here, and the main thing is like just how much information, social media, Google dorking, things like that really provide you more information about a person. So for OSINT sources that I like are, of course, online searches like Google dorking. You have also Bing version of Bing dorking. You also have, social media. You have data leaks are really good. So everyone's been compromised in some regard. Well, that's a great way for a red teamer to get a harvesting of usernames and passwords that have been used before, because eventually you can use them for dictionary attacks and things like that. Port scanning, dumpster diving, GitHub, so your developer repositories are always really helpful to get more information about code, to understanding more about that organization. And then, Pastebin, just any sort of dump sites are really helpful. And then you have Shodan. And what I really like about things like LinkedIn is happy birthday, right? Who likes to wish people happy birthday on LinkedIn? Well, it kind of tells you that. And the great thing about birthday is a birthday is a PII. So that's one security question you already can say, okay, I know that, and start building out a profile of an individual, along with hobbies, friends, significant others. If you want to, eventually say that you know somebody, you know them because of an ex-neighbor, things like that, they can find everything publicly.
And so for blue team, again, LinkedIn, great source for blue team. Looking up the people you're going to be working with, if you know you're going to be giving a presentation to, say, an executive within your organization, finding out about that executive, finding out, what is their background? Did they start from tech and work their way up into the executive ranks? Did they start in business? Did they start in music? Finding out that information about who that person is and what their interests are, because these are things that'll play into, how you shape your message and how you, do some of the techniques that we talk about later, like framing and things that help put them at ease, get them to feel that you are together with them and part of their team. But also there's things like your internal, if you have Confluence, there's got a lot of great material in there you can search for. If you're trying to find out, if you have one contact for a person and you're going to be meeting with them and then their whole team, you can find out about other team members, find out what they do, what their backgrounds is. It's all about being prepared and knowing who you're going to be talking to. And you can use both the internal and external resources to get that information. And part of that is that you want to join what I kind of term as micro-societies. So all these little groups that you're going to be working with as a blue teamer, these people that you need to get with and to help drive good security within your organization, they're going to set up specific languages. They're going to have specific terms. They're going to have specific ideas about things. And to be able to convince them to do the right thing, you're going to need to know about their own micro-society. What is it that they do? What are their interests? How do they use language? So that when you go in there and start talking to them, you sound like you are part of their group. Because otherwise, you're going to be an outsider, and there's always resistance to people being outsiders coming in and telling you what to do. So get your OSINT, know the people you're talking about.
Great, and now we're going to transition to communication models.
Yeah. So communication modeling, this is the idea that you're going to take a look at how you are actually going to do your communication. Mm-hmm. There are core components of that. You've got your source sender, who you are, channel, how you will be communicating with them, the message, what you are actually trying to deliver, the receiver, i.e. your target, whether that's for good or bad, and then the feedback, your goal, what you want to get back from them.
Oh, wait. Hold on. Oh, that works. Yeah,
works.
the arrow works. Cool. So part of that, so for the red team is, in this case, your source is who are you trying to impersonate? Who is that? Is that somebody who is at the help desk? Is that somebody who is in HR? Know everything about that person because you're going to be that person,
And for blue team, a little more straightforward, it is who you are. But who you are can vary. Like, do you want to come in as a voice of authority? Do you want to come in as a member of the team? Do you want to come in as a noob looking for information from them? None of the, you don't want to lie because, again, we are within the confines of being the blue team, and it's not about tricking someone, but it is about managing that presentation of who you are to make sure that they relate in the proper way to the messaging you will be creating.
Yep, and then for red teaming, the communication channel is all based on your pretext. So are you going to use a formal channel? Are you going to use an informal channel? Well, it really depends on who you're trying to impersonate in this case. So if you're impersonating somebody, let's say in a help desk, and then you need to know sort of their org structure. You have to know their culture within their team to know, okay, well, are they really, do you need to have a PowerPoint slide? Do you need to dress a certain way so you can be them? They could have a very relaxed structure where they're just like to do more like tap of the shoulder, like shoulder tapping and say, hey, let's work with people. And that's important because you're being them. So to be them, you have to know everything about them.
Yeah, and for blue team, communication channel, you're going to have probably a lot more choices to work with, but then it's important to think about what is the communication channel that is most effective to the target. So, thinking back to your kind of OSINT information that you gathered on your target, do they prefer text messages? Do they prefer presentations? Do they prefer giant Word docs describing things out in great detail? Do they like the quick presentation? Thinking about which is going to be the most effective channel to interact with your target.
So yeah, and same thing with messaging, right? The messaging has to be appropriate to your target. So in this case, how would they be communicating? What are they communicating? And so in terms of the help desk, the message is going to be around a lot of problem solving, people are going to have issues with their desktops. They're going to have all these technology questions. So you need to be prepared for that. And that's your message. You are the authority in this regard. So you can't talk about HR if you are a help desk person. It's just irrelevant. It doesn't make any sense. So it's very much specific to your pretext.
And so messaging within blue team, again, we're not trying to hide our intent, but it is important to control that message of the intent. You don't necessarily want to scare someone away with something that's too abrupt in your initial message. So maybe it's about setting up things like, this is a kind of a good thing going on. I've heard great things about you. I'm trying to find some more information, and then lead into what you're actually going to be asking for, whether that's information or asking them something to do, and then closing out that messaging with something that makes them think of not of what you're asking them to do, but how that plays back into something that's helpful for them. So again, thinking about the message, trying to make sure that it doesn't come off too abrupt and push away your target.
Yeah, and the receiver in this case is the person you're communicating to. So for a red team, you're impersonating, let's say for me, I don't know, I'll use Linda because it was used today in HR. If I'm Linda in HR and I'm impersonating Linda in HR, my receiver is a person that I'm trying to get the information from or understand the processes so that I can bypass them. And so the messaging has to be, in that case, make sense for that recipient. So I have to be keeping an eye on the recipient.
And then blue team, same thing. It's all about knowing who you were talking to. So again, all that OSINT stuff you did previously all plays into understanding your eventual target and making sure that you are adjusting your source, channel, and message to be most effective against the receiver, your target.
And then the last thing that's really important in the communication model is your feedback. And that's happening while you're talking to somebody, right? So you need to be aware of, are they giving you like positive, body language? I'm kind of doing it, and I'm like, oh, am I talking? But yes, is it like positive, open structure body language? Are they happy to see you? Is this going well? These are the things that should be clicking as feedback for you. And as for a red team, it's very important because that's when your security alarm's going to go off. Like if that conversation's not going well, you might need to either pivot and be flexible and try something else, or you need a way out. And sometimes that could cost you, right? Like if it's not going well, I could get arrested, or the security could be called on me, or there's a security incident, and that's not going to be fun for anybody. So in that case, it's really reading the individual. A lot of that's your nonverbals, like trying to look for, and also audible signs, like are they excited? They're saying, oh, sounds good, this is great, or are they just like, standoffish, or it's not working out, because then you need to pivot.
And for blue team, again, you're trying to get a certain reaction out of the person you're working with. And you need that feedback because you're waiting to either get them to accept that they need to go do some patching, or they need to implement some technology that's most likely going to be more work for them. But once you get that feedback, if they are resistant to it, you need to kind of look back at your communication model and see what stage maybe you need to readjust to better tailor the message there. And just don't give up. You're going to keep trying because you got to do it. You got to secure your environment. So using that feedback really to build out your communication model. And when you're building a communication model, really, you want to start with the feedback because your end result is what you need to get. So you have to look back at all the different patterns that will help, all the different components of that, and build it up so that you think you are staging up to get the feedback that you're looking for.
So yeah, and another way to look at the communication model, so we gave you this other structure, and then you have another way to look at it, and another way is through three ways. It's perception, evaluation, and transmission. So perception's more like, the ability to see, hear, become aware of something through your senses, right? So even let's throw smell in there too, because sometimes people are smelly. And then the evaluation is, I'm looking for feedback from you guys. So if I throw in something, so the evaluation is really, the form of an idea, the amount of the value. They're assessing this information. Are they actually processing it? Things like that. And the transmission is really the act of actually transmitting that message. So think about like networks. Think about packets through a network, right? That would be the best way to think about transmitting information. I'm actually transmitting information right now. Are you guys getting it? A really bad joke. And then the other way is also you have the structure of the communication. That is through self, the other, which is you guys, and then the context. What are we talking about, right? And all of those things are going on. So there's a lot happening in this communication. So you need to be aware of.
Yeah, and again, same thing for the blue team. If you think about this process, if you've ever talked to someone in marketing or in sales, especially a floor salesperson, they're all going to know these kinds of processes and techniques, and it's really the same thing that we're trying to apply. We are trying to sell something, whether that's an attack or that is something from getting someone to buy something or improve their security. Using perception, evaluation, and transmission to get that message out there is important.
Yeah, and we have a quick video for you. So who here watches Parks and Recreation? Oh, good. So, okay, so you'll be familiar. And it's all about, in this case, kind of what not to do in a communication model. Like there's a lot happening. It could be better, but that's it. We have those moments. So bear with me. Let's play it.
Someone's in there. This is going to be fun. Are you excited? Excited. Are you ready? Yes. Pumped up? Yes. Look pumped. Come. Good afternoon. We are representatives from your local government. May we speak with you for a moment about the Sullivan Street pit? Sure. Excellent positive response. How would you feel if we turned that pit into a beautiful community park?
Oh, yeah, that'd be a great idea.
Oh, good. Oh, I actually live in the neighborhood, so I could probably tell you a little bit about Section 20. We are having a public forum tomorrow night, and it would be great if you could come voice your strong support.
Tomorrow. I can't. I'm busy. Sorry.
Yes, we understand. People are busy, but we would love for you to come to the meeting.
Sorry. Good luck, though. I'm all for a park.
Would it change your mind if we told you that she's gone?
Yeah, park, huh?
So yeah. So that tells you a little bit about, here they prepared, they came in with a lot of resources, and their main ask here was for her to support this community park project, but also to get her to the meeting. And what they failed to do was, as much as Anne wanted to throw her personal stories in it, which probably would have actually ended up in this lady actually joining the meeting, it kind of was a failed attempt because she looked very, very scripted. So those are things to be aware of in terms of not to do in like a red team engagement or a blue team. But
The importance of adjusting your message based on the feedback you're getting. And they stuck to the script. They didn't adjust. They lost their target.
yep.
Okay, now we got to get to go forward.
Oh no, hold on. I got it.
More technical difficulties. All right. So, psychological principles.
Yeah. So one of my favorite psychological principles is instant rapport building. And the whole point of an instant rapport building is kind of what I'm doing with you guys right now. I hope we're friends, because the whole idea is to build this like quick relationship, right? Where you're trying to build a connection with a complete stranger. And the reason why I have this GIF up there with security guards is because as a red teamer, if you can get security guards to look like this, you're golden. You can probably ask them to do whatever you like. Hey, can I get in without a badge? They'll be like, yeah, sure. You're my friend now. So that kind of gives you the nonverbals in this case, where they're excited, they're smiling faces, they're very open, body stance, all of those things are important. And then some of the principles are like likability. Everybody likes to be liked, right? I mean, that's a human nature. At the same time, you're building that trust, and how do you do it? So the acts of service is really important. If you do something for somebody, aren't you expecting that in return? I am. And then ego suspension, which really just means that, everyone has an ego, just feed into it. So I'm like, oh, I don't know anything about anything. Please help me. And everyone's ready to help me, and I can get anything done as a result. Like, I don't know how to get access to this network. Can you please put in your 80 credentials, please, for me? And they'll be like, all right, sure, I'll do it. Cool.
Yeah, and for blue team, again, same thing. You want your target to like you. You don't want them to set up their barriers. So ego suppression. asking them about, hey, I heard you were working on this project. It sounds really interesting. I don't know a lot about it. Could you talk to me about it? Could you tell me about it? I'm really curious. It starts making them feel good because they are coming off as being an expert. They're the ones that are educating you. You may already know everything about it. You may not need that, but giving them the opportunity to start talking about something they are hopefully passionate about makes them more interesting and susceptible to you asking questions later on and start digging into where you have concerns and having that good conversation with them. Again, setting up that likability, starting that conversation so that they're not enemies to you and you're not their enemy. You're all part of a team.
Yep, and then I love this one. It's the human buffer overflow. And what that really just means is, I mean, who here has been super duper overwhelmed before? A lot of people. See, I have too. It's also, you have like sensory overload where you're just like going to Vegas and you smell everything. There's so many things happening. That's a good example. But the whole point is you're getting overloaded. You're getting overloaded with either information or emotions or senses. But that is also a great advantage for a red teamer because then you can use that as a way to get people to do things for you. And as a result, influence them, right? Which is the ultimate act. And so 2 laws here. So the laws of expectation and then you embed key commands. It's like formula. So laws of expectation really relies on if I do something for you, chances are you're going to do something for me. And that could be like at a traffic light or yielding. You let somebody go through and you're nice to them. You're hoping somebody will return that favor. It's really tapping into that human psychology there. And then embedding key commands would be like, oh, while you're up, if you're going to go get some coffee, would you mind getting some coffee for me too? And that's a harmless way to do it, but that's a tactic that we can also use for the red team. Basically in ways of like, hey, could you just hold the door for me? I have a lot of stuff in my hands. Let me get in. People are going to be nice, right? They're going to be feeling good about holding that door for you.
And for blue team, you can't necessarily force on a buffer overflow situation. But there are opportunities that come up where you may be able to take advantage of a situation like that. So a great example is, if your company's into the whole agile process or SAFe or one of those, there are these big meetings that go on called program increment, PI meetings. During these events, there is a lot of stuff going on. There are people talking about all the work going on in the area, people trying to process stuff. There are people trying to figure out things, trying to set up their work for the next couple of sprints, the next 8 weeks. There's a lot going on. This is a great opportunity to take advantage of the buffer overflow in blue team because you can go in there and they're most likely have their defenses down. Again, we're not trying to attack them, but we are trying to get information from them that, in some other circumstances, they may be more resistant or more questioning of why you are bothering them. But if you're coming in, these big meetings, you're part of the team, you're their, information security officer there to help give them good guidance. It gives you an opportunity to have some questions and conversations that they may not be as interested in doing if it was like a one-on-one in a much more prepared environment for them. Taking advantage of that buffer overload situation with the large meeting, a lot of stuff going on, to get some of those questions answered.
So we have a quick video for you. Has anybody seen Robocop? I actually have not seen this movie, but what I like about it is how I visualize human buffer overflow. In this case, it's kind of like literal because he's going to get super overwhelmed. And let's see if this works, because I'm going to have to skip ahead a little bit.
We're going to upload the entire DPD database into your brain. That means you'll have instantaneous access to criminal records, plus an archive of CCTV footage from 2011 to the present. All right. Hit me. Okay, yep, it's all yours.
Archive footage uploading successfully.
Your system draws connections automatically to link perpetrators to the crimes and give you their exact locations whenever available.
I got evidence to make. 130, 66 arrests.
His emotions are stable.
It's incredible.
You will notice his family is here in the building.
Stop talking.
Dr. Norton, he's getting too emotional.
We're going to do some things. Alex, calm down. Take a breath.
Perfect. So I wanted the complete breakdown, right? So as a red teamer, like, I mean, if someone's in that state, I think I can probably get them to do whatever. But the point is not to actually break somebody down to that level. Again, it's always very positive. I'm a good guy after all. But the point in this is to show like how much data he's taking in, which kind of happens even for humans and their brains, and it does get overloaded, so people do shut down. So anyway, it was kind of cool to see that.
Okay, that was the next one. Yes, okay, so modes of thinking. So another psychological principle we can think of. Different people react to accepting information in different ways. So this is the idea that some people like hearing things told to them. They more easily absorb information that they hear. Other people are more visual people. They see things, and that helps them remember stuff. And then there's another group, and we always mispronounce it, kinesthetic individuals. So this is kind of more of the feeling, smelling, touching kind of sensations. These three groups all, they can hear or see, they can absorb information in many different ways. But for whatever reason, however their mind kind of works, one of these is the most effective for them. And so one of the things you want to do is try to find out what kind of person, the person you are interacting with, what kind of person they are. Because if you tailor your communication to someone who's a hearing person, so if most of your communication involves talking or voice calls or in-person things where they're actually hearing the information you're trying to tell them, they're going to be able to process that better. And if it's a seeing, having that presentation, your slides, potentially sending emails or documents, things that they read, stuff that they see helps them process that information. And then with the feeling, that one's a little more challenging because usually that involves having some kind of a specific interaction with them. So these are the people who, communication might be like, do you feel what I'm, do you get the same feeling I'm getting when you see this? Can you feel how this is going? They're going to use language that makes you think of the, the touch sensation or something like that. And then you have challenges where, you may not have a mode of communication that actually matches up to their mode of thinking. So then you have to kind of think of how do I present in this other format, which might trigger the format that's most appropriate to them. So like the quote up there I put there, think of the alarm bells going off with these new alerts. So you're working with someone who's a more auditory person, but you can't actually talk to them. Well, when you're crafting the email, think of language that triggers auditory memories. So strong auditory memories like alarm bells or fire engines or sirens or think of all those kind of noises that stir up an emotion in just about anyone when they think of those words because they have very specific things that they associate with it. Using that kind of language in your communication when it's written helps connect to people who are more auditory. So thinking about how you are writing or presenting your stuff that triggers those different things. For feeling people, maybe if you're in a presentation with them and you're giving them, showing them slides and everything, print out the presentation because often they're the people who like having that physical piece of paper in their hands to flip through.
Yep. And then for red teaming, you can use this for rapport building, which is really helpful. I mean, if you know that they're audible, you can use that language. Seeing, like even just words like how people talk, like they're like, I use sounds good a lot. I guess I might be more audible as a result. But hearing certain words and how they talk to you can help you adapt and basically use it against them. It sounded bad, but so that you on the same wavelength. Great. And now we are going to be talking about influencing others. So yeah, so influencing others, it's a lot of elicitation's a really good tactic where you're basically, it's really a subtle act where you're just having a really nice, friendly conversation and you learn everything about them. And What I really like is how NSA talks about it. They basically say elicitation is a term that applied to subtle extraction of information during an apparently normal or innocent conversation. And it truly is that. Your target for a red teamer shouldn't really know what you're really doing. It should feel very natural. It should feel like you guys are best friends and you build this great rapport, but yet nothing feels out of the ordinary because you want to blend in as much as possible. And then you're just like, just getting information from them. That's all.
Yeah. And for blue team, again, you can use the same technique. I kind of gave an earlier example where I was talking about, you talking to someone, asking them about a project they're doing. Well, maybe you don't know everything about that project, and you're trying to get a particular piece of information in there, and you're worried that they might be resistant or trying to hide something or inclined to hide something because, oh, you're from the security office. That's probably going to get me in trouble. Well, again, starting with kind of the more casual conversation, getting them comfortable, talking about their tech, not in a, I'm asking you questions about your technology, but I'm curious, like, can you tell me about it? And it gets them into a more natural conversation with you, and then you can carefully steer that conversation to try to get those specific information that you need out of it. And then later on, that helps inform whatever your ask or requirements are going to be.
Mm-hmm. So I have a quick movie clip for you about how amazing this elicitation is. But I think I have to start it at 35. Here, I'll start here. Uh-oh. Please work.
We lost my internet.
Oh, is that why?
I'm just checking.
No, I think it's connected.
There
we
it is.
go. Can you hear it? All right. So, I mean, the whole point in showing you this little clip is aside from it just being boy meets girl, it's not just boy meets girl. There are two girls that are traveling. They're obviously from they seem that they're from a foreign country. In this case, they're from the United States, and they're supposedly in Paris. But the whole idea is here you have this guy who's obviously scoped them out, knows that, has been watching them, approaches them very innocently about taking a photo. What do tourists like? They love taking photos. So be that person, and you just blend it in very nicely. And then ask innocent questions like, where are you from? And then they started providing all this information about, how they're excited about wanting, I don't know, there's a lot of nonverbals there too, where they're just excited, they think he's cute, so he's already in. So there's a lot happening there, and this guy's just naturally getting more information. And then, of course, it turns into a kidnapping situation later. But aside from that, just taking the good point in this is how the elicitation was done so innocently. And these women were providing information that they probably should have been a little bit more careful about. That's still on the video, so just click away. Yep. Nope.
That's still not going.
There you go.
Okay.
Awesome. And so part of influencing is also how you frame the conversation, right? So, and a frame, I like this Skiffy because it's a frame in a portrait. But the whole idea is that you're building this foundation of your conversation, of your approach, things like that. And so the red team can use this frame to speak the same language. And a good example I have up here is like, it could be something like, did you know that 15% of IoT devices use default passwords? So do you know your default password? I mean, maybe it's not the best, but it could work based on a better, more rapport building, things like that. But what are the default passwords? Oh, admin 1234. Okay, cool. Is the A capitalized? Sure. Okay. But you're just, soliciting information that way. You find out how many of the IoT devices in your environment might have default passwords. As long as they say yes somehow, you at least have a win.
And Blue Team, again, this is very helpful because one of the, again, we as information security going into groups or technical groups or non-technical groups are often looked at, oh no, this person coming in. So when you come in and you start off a conversation like the example up there, starting off going, you have done actually a great job. We've gotten, you've gotten up to 75% of the systems are patched. But, I'd like to know what I can do to help you get those last 25 versus coming in and saying, you failed to patch 25%. What are you going to do about that? One becomes adversarial while the other one sounds like you are part of the team and trying to help. Framing up that conversation to get them to be interested in, oh, I've done something good, but I can do better, versus I screwed up and now you're going to get me in trouble, are very important parts of that communicating with those outside teams and getting them so they're more interested and susceptible to doing the right thing.
Yep, and then other techniques of influencing others, and we've kind of already talked about this, but to reemphasize would be natural, educate yourself, don't be greedy, right? Take your time. Like we heard that a lot today, like take your time, especially with your target as a red team. Don't push it. Don't look desperate. These are also good dating advice, by the way. So just saying. Yeah, and you can probably do that.
Yeah, so, and all the techniques are kind of mentioned up here, like open and closed-ended questions. These are all things that, whether you're red team or blue team, are important in how you kind of, potentially lead the witness or guide people through the conversation to get the information that you need. Taking the different techniques that we've talked about and kind of wrapping them into, your conversation, adapting your conversation, and making sure that, it's a natural conversation, doing your homework beforehand so that you're not going up there going, let me check my notes. So what team were you on? Oh, right. No, you want to be in there and be able to feel like, they want to feel like that you are there, you've been paying attention, you know who they are, you're part of the team.
Yep.
Yeah. So again, it's all about developing the empathy and trust with the people you're working with and delivering your request.
Yeah, and to sum it up, basically, as a red teamer or a blue teamer, you're basically trying to build a relationship with somebody, building the same sort of foundation, being on the same page, and using those principles of helping one another to get to a goal. That's very simple. So yeah. So this is us. We have some further reading. We can happy to share this slide, but if you want to take pictures, you can. But there's lots of great reading as well. I love podcasts because I drive to work a lot, so that's really helpful. And then, of course, there are fabulous people within the industry that you can follow on Twitter.
Yeah, and I read a lot of the social engineering books because again they have great information that we can use as blue teamers. And I've highlighted a couple of chapters that I thought were most appropriate for blue team operations. And I've read kind of both of the human hacking books, both the first and second edition. There's some varying information, and I've kind of made notes of the differences there. And of course, there's some great Twitter feeds to follow. Jack Hike, I really like listening to her stories. Listening to how red team do things and listening to the processes they do help educate towards the blue team and how you can tailor your communications.
Yep.
So.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Go ahead. Here, I'll give you my mic.
So this might be a stupid question, but is there a digital equivalent to dumpster diving, or are you literally talking about grabbing, throwing away social information? Or?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've done dumpster diving. A lot of times it's also like, it doesn't literally have to be the big dumpster. It could just be going through people's trash at work.
Yes, okay.
I do that. Like people have sometimes personal trash, or then they don't discard proper documents where they should. Like there's an actual shredder. You could go through that before it's shred. So yeah, or sometimes people just leave stuff on their desks and stuff. I mean, that's not dumpster diving, but if it's accessible, it could be accessible for the bad guy.
And for the blue team, I guess the closest, I'm not going to go in trash cans, but taking a look at it, like if you have something like Confluence, taking a look at the document history. So they've thrown those old revisions away. They're looking at a current page, but kind of looking back at where they've made changes, where they've made updates, who's made those updates, help again educate you to what they're doing.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I was listening during the whole presentation. You mentioned goal once at the very end, and I'm thinking goal-driven. Is that if you're working as a red, blue, or blue, red? When you're going into this, where is that part of the effort?
So the question is,
I was using the
yeah.
like this.
So the question is, here our goal at the end, where does that fit into kind of the other things that we were talking about? And your goal, and we kind of alluded to that earlier when we were talking about feedback. Feedback, goal, those are really kind of mixed in very tightly together. So everything that you're doing is you're trying to achieve some certain goal, and all of these different techniques are to build to that goal. So like when you're going into the communication modeling thing, I was trying to say you start off with your feedback or your goal, what you want to do, and you build up the rest of your communication model based on what you are trying to achieve, i.e. your goal. And then as you do go through and you deliver your communication model and you get back your feedback, if that isn't the goal that you were trying to get, to go back and re-revise your communication model, maybe adjust the messaging or change the way you're talking to the person, or instead of just sending an email, maybe it's a phone call because you need to find out whether they're an auditory or a visual person. So achieving that goal helps, whether you fail or succeed, helps inform how you're going to do that communication. Exactly. It becomes a circle. More questions?
And then for the red team, it tends to be very goal-oriented from the beginning. So all your objectives are already listed. So if you're, let's say, emulating, I don't know, let's say ransomware, for example, and you have an insider threat activity doing that, then that would be your goal. So then your goal would be you'll be impersonating an insider, you'll be spreading it, yeah, and you'll only be sticking to that and nothing more. Any other questions? Don't be shy. Okay, thank you.